This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the briefing. We're diving into a series of intense legal developments and criminal cases from across the country, starting with a shocking poisoning investigation that began with a simple robbery.
An Indiana man was poisoned with a root beer float.
A Virginia couple killed their disabled lodger over chores.
A Wisconsin man was convicted of killing a police officer.
States are suing the Trump administration over mail-in voting.
A serial killer faces trial for a Florida murder.
A man was arrested for his wife's 1992 murder.
A Washington woman journaled about her plan to kill.
A Texas man was sentenced for a brutal home burglary.
First, the Indiana poisoning.
In Freetown, Indiana, the sudden death of 52-year-old Harold Allen, known affectionately as Peanut, initially seemed like a tragic health crisis. Harold was a large man with diabetes and chronic gastrointestinal issues, so when he died just before Christmas in 2022, few suspected foul play. His family recalled him looking distressed during Thanksgiving dinner, complaining that the side of his face had gone numb. Despite his worsening condition, he refused an ambulance. It wasn't until a separate robbery investigation involving his wife, Marcia Allen, that a much darker reality emerged. Investigators discovered that Marcia had been searching for ways to poison her husband, eventually settling on a plan involving a root beer float laced with ethylene glycol, a toxic chemical found in antifreeze. This revelation turned a natural death investigation into a sinister murder case.
The details are truly chilling because the poisoning wasn't a one-time event, but a calculated effort. Marcia Allen allegedly used her husband's existing health vulnerabilities as a cover, making his symptoms appear like a natural decline. When police searched her digital history, they found searches for poisonous desserts and how much antifreeze kills a human. The robbery that broke the case open involved Marcia reporting a break-in, but when officers looked into her background, they found the digital trail of her murderous intent. It's a terrifying example of how domestic crimes can hide in plain sight, especially when the victim has pre-existing medical conditions. The community was stunned to learn that the man they knew as Peanut was actually the victim of a slow, deliberate execution by the person closest to him in his own home.
Next, the Virginia lodger murder.
In Norfolk, Virginia, a couple has been sentenced to 25 years each for the horrific murder of Jose Moreno, a disabled man they had invited to live with them. Christy and James Lynch met Moreno at their church and offered him a room because he had nowhere else to go. However, this act of charity quickly turned into a nightmare of abuse. Moreno, who used a walker, was forced to hand over his disability checks and perform household chores. When he failed to meet their demands, or spoke Spanish to his family on the phone, the Lynches would punish him. This escalated to a final, brutal assault, where James Lynch beat Moreno with a frying pan while Christy assisted. They eventually strangled him with a dog leash and a belt, leaving his body under a blanket for 2 days.
The cruelty in this case is hard to fathom, especially given that the victim was targeted because of his vulnerability. Prosecutors described the murder as one of the most heinous they had ever seen. The Lynches didn't just kill Moreno. They humiliated and tortured him for months before the final act. After the murder, they were so hesitant to report it that they waited 48 hours, only calling 911 after consulting with the pastor. When police arrived, they found Moreno's body at the bottom of a staircase, covered in bruises and cuts. James Lynch pleaded guilty to second-degree murder last year, while Christy was recently found guilty of first-degree murder. Despite the different charges, the judge ensured they received identical 25-year sentences, reflecting their equal roles in this tag-team killing that shocked the Norfolk community.
Now, the Milwaukee officer shooting.
A Wisconsin jury has convicted 23-year-old Tremaine Jones for the intentional homicide of Milwaukee police officer Kendall Corder. The incident began as a dispute between two women over a cheating boyfriend, which escalated when a man with a gun intervened to break up the fight. One of the women, unhappy with the intervention, called Jones for backup. Jones arrived on the scene armed with a short-barreled rifle and began firing indiscriminately, essentially turning the neighborhood into a shooting gallery. When Officer Corder and his partner arrived to investigate the shots fired, Jones opened fire on them, discharging 16 rounds. Officer Corder was struck and later died from his injuries at the hospital. His partner was also hit but survived the encounter. The prosecution emphasized that Jones's reaction was a deliberate choice to use lethal force against law enforcement.
The trial featured powerful evidence, including a recorded jailhouse phone call where Jones admitted to his mother that he had just killed a cop. While the defense might have argued about whether he knew they were officers in the heat of the moment, the prosecution successfully argued that his intent was clear the moment he started firing his rifle at people running away. Jones was found guilty on multiple counts, including first-degree intentional homicide and recklessly endangering safety. The community has been mourning Officer Corder, a 32-year-old who was simply responding to a call for help. This conviction brings a sense of justice to the Milwaukee Police Department, but it also highlights the extreme danger officers face when responding to domestic disputes that spiral out of control due to the presence of high-powered firearms in the hands of volatile individuals.
Moving to the election lawsuit.
Several states, led by California, have filed a federal lawsuit against the Trump administration, challenging a new executive order aimed at reshaping federal elections. The order, titled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections, seeks to enforce strict citizenship verification and restrict mail-in voting to lists pre-authorized by the federal government. The plaintiffs argue that the president has no constitutional authority to dictate how states administer their elections. They claim the order violates the separation of powers and the Elections Clause of the Constitution, which grants states the primary role in managing voting procedures. The lawsuit specifically targets the administration's directive for the Department of Homeland Security to create approved voter lists and for the U.S. Postal Service to limit the processing of mail-in ballots based on these federal lists, which the states call an unlawful attempt at federal overreach.
This legal battle is significant because it touches on the fundamental balance of power between the federal government and the states. The Trump administration argues these measures are necessary to ensure election integrity and prevent non-citizens from voting. However, the suing states contend that these rules would disenfranchise legitimate voters and create administrative chaos, just as election cycles are beginning. By requiring formal documentation for citizenship and cutting off mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day, even if postmarked on time, the executive order could significantly alter voter turnout and results. The states are asking the court to declare the order unconstitutional and prevent its enforcement. This case will likely move quickly through the federal court system, as both sides recognize the high stakes for the upcoming national elections and the precedent it sets for executive authority over state-run processes.
Next, the Florida cold case.
In Orlando, Florida, the trial of DeMaurice Hunter is set to begin, where he faces a potential death sentence for the '22 murder of Teresa Ann Green. Hunter, who was already convicted of a separate murder in Oakland, California, is accused of strangling Green and hiding her body in the trunk of her own car. The two lived in the same apartment building and were seen together at a party before the incident. Witnesses reported seeing them fall down a flight of stairs together before entering Green's apartment. Later that night, Hunter allegedly asked a neighbor to help him move Green's car to a Walgreens parking lot, admitting he had done something really bad. When police discovered the vehicle, they found Green's body wrapped in material in the trunk, and the medical examiner confirmed she had been manually strangled to death.
Hunter's history makes this case particularly high profile. He was extradited from California to Florida after receiving a 110-year sentence for the Oakland murder, which involved a friend of his girlfriend. Prosecutors in Florida are now seeking the ultimate penalty, citing the brutal nature of Green's death. The evidence includes testimony from the neighbor who helped move the car, and statements from another acquaintance who claimed Hunter confessed to the California murder before he was even a suspect there. This trial represents a major effort by Florida authorities to hold a suspected serial killer accountable for his actions across state lines. As opening statements begin, the focus will be on the forensic evidence found in the car and the timeline of events that led from a neighborhood party to a tragic discovery in a pharmacy parking lot.
Now, the '92 murder arrest.
A decades-old cold case in Washington state has finally seen a breakthrough with the arrest of 68-year-old James Robert Randall. In 1992, Randall's estranged wife Janice was found dead in her bed with her toddler daughter nearby. At the time, Randall claimed she had overdosed on painkillers, and since the initial autopsy was inconclusive, the case went cold for over 30 years. However, the investigation was recently reopened after family members came forward with shocking new information. Randall's own siblings and children reported that he had confessed to the murder multiple times over the years. He allegedly described how he staged the crime scene to look like an overdose and admitted to suffocating Janice with a pillow. This new testimony provided the probable cause needed for police to arrest Randall at the retirement home where he was living.
The arrest was captured on body camera footage, showing a frail Randall asking, "What's this about?" as he was taken into custody. Despite his age and health, the Pierce County Sheriff's Office emphasized that justice has no expiration date. The prosecutor revealed in court that Randall told one of his daughters, "Just know it was me," regarding the murder. This case is a powerful example of how long-held family secrets can eventually come to light, providing closure for victims' families decades later. Janice's daughter, who was just a toddler in a crib when her mother was killed, has lived her entire life without knowing the truth until now. Randall has pleaded not guilty and is being held on a $1 million bail as the legal system finally addresses a crime that was nearly forgotten by everyone, except those who lived with the guilt.
Next, the Spokane Journal murder.
In Spokane, Washington, 33-year-old Alyssa Bradburn has been sentenced to over 28 years in prison for the first-degree murder of her father, Timothy Bradburn. The case is particularly disturbing because Alyssa meticulously planned the killing for weeks, documenting her thoughts and preparations in a personal journal. In June 2024, just as her father returned home from a trip to Hawaii, Alyssa opened fire on him as he walked through the front door. She shot him multiple times, ensuring he would not survive. When police arrived, she didn't just confess, she handed them her notebook, telling them it contained everything they needed to know about her plan and her reasons. While she initially claimed self-defense and past abuse, she later withdrew those allegations, admitting that her father was not a threat to her at the time she chose to kill him.
The sentencing hearing was emotional, as Alyssa's brother, Trace, spoke about the devastating loss of their father. The judge noted that Alyssa had no prior criminal history, making the jump to first-degree murder even more shocking. The journal evidence was a central part of the prosecution's case, showing that she had even practiced at a local shooting range to ensure she could carry out the execution effectively. The court issued a permanent no-contact order between Alyssa and her brother, effectively severing the last of her family ties. This case highlights a terrifying level of premeditation, where a daughter spent weeks visualizing and writing about the death of her parent before following through with cold-blooded precision. The 28-year sentence reflects the gravity of a crime that was planned in the quiet pages of a notebook and executed in a violent ambush.
Finally, the Texas burglary sentencing.
A 20-year-old Texas man, Joshua Bermea, will spend the next 50 years in prison following a series of violent attacks on his ex-girlfriend. The abuse began after the woman ended their relationship, leading Bermea to send over 250 threatening text messages in a single day. He told her he would make her live in hell and threatened to kill her and her family. The situation escalated when Bermea broke into her home, assaulted her repeatedly, and choked her until she couldn't breathe. He hit her so hard that she temporarily lost her hearing. After the attack, he broke her phone and sent a final chilling message promising to return and finish what he started. Bermea pleaded guilty to burglary of a habitation with intent to commit a felony and a separate drug charge, resulting in consecutive sentences that ensure he will be behind bars for decades.
The severity of the sentence reflects the extreme nature of the stalking and physical violence Bermea inflicted. Prosecutors emphasized that the sheer volume of threats, 250 messages in 24 hours, showed a dangerous level of obsession and intent. The victim's bravery in reporting the break-in and the subsequent assault was crucial in securing the 40-year term for the burglary alone. Judge Gary Steele ordered the sentences to run consecutively, meaning Bermea must finish his 40-year term before even starting the 10-year drug sentence. This case serves as a stark warning about the escalation of domestic violence and the legal system's commitment to protecting victims from predators who refuse to accept the end of a relationship. For the victim, this sentence provides a long overdue sense of security after a period of living in the hell Bermea promised to create.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us as we navigate these complex stories. We will be back tomorrow with another update on the cases you are following.